This
I
conference
don't
will
know.
now be recorded.
All right, we are recording. Welcome everyone to our May monthly PI coordinator call. Next slide. So our agenda for this morning, we'll give you all a update on recruitment, some general announcements. Most importantly, the protocol version 8 is now totally ready to go, and you all should be recruiting patients using the new consent forms that were sent out last week. We'll get to more on that in a minute. And then we'll discuss the new process for deviation logs, both the new version of the deviation log as well as the new process of submitting these on a monthly basis rather than scrambling at the end of the year at the time of IRB continuing review. Next slide. So as of last week, we had 232 patients randomized from 39 active centers. At least 34 centers have recruited one or more patients, and Children's Hospital of the King's Daughter and Cincinnati Children's are our recruitment leaders with 18 participants apiece. Congratulations to Iowa, Wash U, Wisconsin, Levine, Cincinnati, and Mercy. All of you have randomized at least one patient in the month of April, and hopefully May will be an equally strong month for your centers as well. Next slide. This graph here just shows our recruitment numbers by site. Next slide. And this shows our total cumulative recruitment, and we are getting closer and closer each month to our target in green of 425 participants. But still 194 patients to go, so we need all the recruitment effort and good karma that we can get. Next slide. In terms of Dr. Manar's lab at Cincinnati, we only need 4 more biosamples for this sub-project. As a reminder, this is the visit 3 lab sample only, so sort of timed right around the end of anti-TNF induction. Before you draw this, or before you know that you have patients coming in for your visit 3 sample, contact Kim Jackson at Cincinnati to make sure that we still need your sample. All of the other biosamples will continue as usual. All of the others are the ones that you all send to our central reference facility at UNC. So again, that is both visit 3 and visit 9, all the standard stuff. It's only the Cincinnati samples that we're going to be closing down hopefully in a couple of weeks. Next slide. So the Protocol 8 amendment that happened early this winter, finally the Cincinnati Children's IRB got around to issuing correct stamped consents for each of your sites to use. These were all sent out by Stephanie Sullivan to your site last week. If you have not received your new consents, please let me know. As a matter of fact, enter that into the chat box now, and Josh will monitor that. It is very important that you all begin using those new consent forms that you received immediately. Do not be using the old consent forms anymore. And this is just a reminder for sites and for PIs who have not completed their protocol signature page or completed and recorded documentation of their training. Please do that this week if possible, so that we can stop harassing you and so that poor Josh can take this off of his bucket list to track. I'm going to give you a moment to see if your name is on this list, and if it is, please do get back to us this week. Please, 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 please. All right, next slide. So again, use the new consents from this time on. Please don't be using the old consents anymore. And just a little bit of guidance, because we've had some questions asked to us. Again, the new consents allow for 3 years of follow-up. And so as you're talking to families, you can introduce this as a 3-year study rather than a 2-year study as you had previously been doing. In that 3rd year, just like in that 2nd year, all that is required is a quarterly visit. And, you know, as usual, and it has always been the case, if families don't like the study, they're welcome to withdraw at any point in time. If sites feel like they would like to withdraw their patients early, that's also allowed. So sort of the consent allows for a maximum follow-up of 3 years, but obviously each family and each site can decide to do something different on a case-by-case basis as needed. Next slide. For all of the patients that were enrolled previously, in other words, prior to this month or prior to you all receiving and using the new consent forms, all of those patients were consented to a 2-year study. And so each of those patients and families has the opportunity to continue with the study for a 3rd year if they would like. So prior to each patient completing his or her 2 years of follow-up, please invite those patients and families to participate in this optional year 3. Patients are eligible for the optional year 3 if they have not yet met a study endpoint or outcome and they are still taking study medication. Medication will be uninterrupted during that 3rd year. Again, as always, it is at no cost to the participants. The ideal time to be having the discussions with patients and families about that 3rd year is right around visit 9, week 91-ish, or the 2nd to last visit, or possibly at the visit 10 or week 104, which would ordinarily be those patients' last visits if they were consented to the 2-year study. All patients who want to continue into year 3 will need to reconsent, again, sort of changing that follow-up period from 2 years to up to 3 years. If current patients do not want to continue for an additional year, that's totally fine. They will complete the study at visit 10, week 104. There's no need to reconsent patients if they are completing at the end of 2 years. That's sort of what they agreed to in the beginning, and nothing changes. So summary is this: for patients who consented under the original 2-year study, when they get to the end of their 2 years, you can offer them a 3rd year of participation, free of charge to the patient and family. This optional 3rd year is only for patients who are still taking study medication and outcome free at the time they complete their 2 years, and just reconsent them prior to entering that 3rd year. If you guys or the patients don't want to do the optional 3rd year, that's fine too. We'll just terminate them as was originally planned at the end of the 2-year study. Next slide. A couple other changes with Protocol 8. You'll notice some database changes this week, I believe. There's going to be 4 additional study visits for that optional year 3. Again, 1 per quarter for 4 quarters. There's going to be a reminder at visit 9 that asks you about reconsent for those patients who might want to continue for this optional 3rd year. And you'll be able to upload the reconsent for those patients who are continuing on with us for a third year at either visit 9 or visit 10. Next slide. The other sort of components of the protocol are just some minor changes to the patient-reported outcome administration, and we just sort of built into the protocol a little bit of flexibility to collect these by email or fax or US mail if you're not collecting them directly from the patient sort of face-to-face with a coordinator in clinic. And if a patient misses a visit with a PRO, it's fine to go ahead and collect that at the subsequent visit as well. And we also have the resource parent flyer that is approved for use. Next slide. And so here is a copy of the resource parent flyer. And again, this is another recruitment tool that you all could use at your sites if you want. You know, when you meet with patients, if they're on the fence and you think it might be helpful for them to talk to another parent whose child has participated in the study, you can go ahead and give them this flyer, and either you or the parent can contact Ann Firestein, and she can put you in touch with a resource parent, or put your prospective parent in touch with a resource parent. We spent a lot of time developing this parent-to-parent program. It really has not been well utilized by sites, so please try it out and let us know what your thoughts are. Next slide. Before moving on to the new deviation log procedures, I want to take a few minutes to see if there's any questions that any sites have about the new consents or anything else about the protocol amendment. After a lot of build up, we are finally live and ready to go with that. So I'll be happy to take any questions. You can either speak up or put them into the chat box. All right, hearing none, I will pass the baton over to Janine, who is our study monitor, to talk us through the new deviation log process. So take it away, Janine.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me start with the hows and whys on the changes in the deviation log. And I would have liked to have started with this. There's a very funny video out about corporations and their need to change things. And it made me laugh just for our study, because there have been quite a few changes. And I want you to know we're aware of that where it comes to the logging of the deviations. And we're trying to make this the easiest for you, and still satisfy the IRB. Cincinnati Children's asked us to provide better oversight, and that means better reporting on the site end, and it means better oversight and reviewing on central side. So in order to do that, we needed to provide a way for you to get the deviations to us in more real time. Back in October, there was some training on deviation logging. I think there was a new log at that time, and SharePoint was the plan. It didn't quite get us where we needed to be. And so this was us taking a step back to look at what would be a better response to this level of oversight that is now required, how to not overburden the sites. And that's where we came up with the survey idea. And I'm going to give you just a little look at what that survey means to you and to me as the study monitor, so that you have a whole picture, sort of the 30,000-foot view of how this works. So REDCap is a database that most are familiar with. This option to survey serves our purpose as well, because it means that I don't have to require you to train on REDCap. I don't have to require you to have a login to REDCap. I'm going to send you a secure invitation via email, and you're going to log in from that email and answer those questions. We designed it. If you haven't taken a look yet, I think about 25 have. I have 2 that have partially reviewed and 25 who have completed a survey. And I thank you for that if you're one of those. If not, no worries, you've got plenty of time. We've got about 3 months here that in my mind, to transfer from the old way to the new way. And I'm here to help you do that. But it is important that you understand why we needed to make the change and how this change affects you. So you've got the why, and then how is the survey piece. From your perspective, you receive an email asking you if you have any deviations from your source deviation log to enter into the database. Now, let me make sure that everybody's clear on what we mean by source deviation log, and there's a lot of definitions here. And the reason for that is, of course, when we started to create this database, collect the data, we needed to make sure that we took 2 steps back to look at what our definitions of a deviation. What is our definition of a deviation? What is our definition of a violation? When do we need a CAPA and when we don't? You know, all of that needed to be documented for our particular study. And so we did that. I'm going to share that with you this morning. And then we built into the database this survey that comes to you once a month. And that survey asks you if you've had any deviation since the last survey. Really, I forget how I worded it exactly. I changed it so many times trying to make it really, really clear to you that the deviations in that electronic questionnaire are really asking you for the data that you've documented on the new deviation log that we provided for you. So this is a whole lot of background work to give you a new deviation log that is based on what you were trained on back in October, and also satisfies what we've claimed now as our definitions, not now, kind of always have been, but I don't know that we have them documented this clearly. So to make sure that we're all on the same page on definitions and process, and also on data gathering, right? And so you were emailed, and if you didn't receive it, you should have been emailed a new deviation log that I do want you to print out. We gave it a little acronym because acronyms work so well in research. And you're going to print out the combined deviation log, the CDL version 2. If my advice to you is to print out about 5 of them and write the page numbers on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get the headers on there. And that is your log. And when an auditor or a monitor comes to your site, and of course, that's not our process, but you will have monitors and auditors from institutional that will come in and take a look. They're going to expect to see that. That is your source documentation. The way that we are providing oversight is that we're allowing those entries from your deviation log to go electronically into this survey, and that's how the monitor gives oversight. So when you receive that email that says, have you had any deviations since the last time, you're going to pop that open. First of all, make sure that you have all your deviations logged on that paper, that combined deviation log version 2, the CDL2. Make sure that everything is documented there first, everything is correct, and everything that you haven't in that last column, we provided a place for you to add a date that you've added that into REDCap, right, or into the survey. Everything that you haven't added then, for that month, you're going to say yes. I need to update it, or you'll say, no, I have nothing else to add. That's documented as a no, you have nothing to add, your survey goes away. If you do have something to add, you've got a new deviation on there, you've just now added it, or we reminded you to add it, or you added it 3 weeks ago, doesn't matter, once a month, you document them in the electronic survey to get it to me. Your documentation on your source that you printed out, that has to be done right away. That's your source. That's the important document, right? When I monitor you, I'm going to ask to see that. I'll also ask to see your previous deviation log so that I've got a picture of the whole deviation story for your site, right? But the new part of the process is the survey where you give us this data from your source. So it's simply a matter of doing data entry, and the way that I've asked you to do the data entry is through a survey. And the reason I've asked you to do it through a survey is so that you don't have to learn another data entry process with another system. So I think Mike said he was very comfortable trying this out as a 90-day process. If you all hate it, we can always do that training and move forward on that process. So including an actual database that collects the information. So I see that someone moved me on to my next slide, and that's fine. I'm ready for that now. Let's talk a little bit about what those definitions are, how we put this down, and I'll say it's very very not well defined, let's say, at the FDA, how exactly that should be done. They're giving you a 30,000-foot definition. And my favorite definition comes out of NIH's, there's a committee for IRB, and it's the Association of IRBs, and they come together once a year, sometimes twice a year, and then they will produce a guidance documents for the IRBs, and that's where this wording really came out of, the NIH IRB Professional Administrators Committee. That's what it is, and this is the version 5.1, so if you want to go look at that, you may. We defined a protocol as any change from the protocol. So if the protocol says you will do this and you did not, that is a protocol deviation, right? It can be accidental, it can be intentional. Both of those are still deviations. And there are two types that are mentioned in this NIH IRB regulatory process sort of publication or guidance on the difference between deviations and violations. And that the minor protocol deviation doesn't have a major impact on the subject's rights. And so we have owned this, their rights, their safety, their well-being, and all that is in plain print for you to read. So all of that is what we have documented as our definition of a protocol deviation for the study. A non-minor deviation does have a major impact. And the decision on whether that does or does not lies with several people, but the place to start is with your study monitor, and then your study monitor will take that up the chain to get agreement and document why, and that's very important that we document why we're seeing this as minor or why we're seeing it as major, right? Okay, so a little bit about a violation. I think you all know that there's a big difference between a deviation and a violation. Significant risk, you've crossed a line, and there's a lot more documentation. It's a more serious deviation, and involves a lot more repair work, let's say. So if you ever need help with the definitions, you can ask, and we're happy to help. You want to go to the next slide? Any questions about, and maybe we should go back one, sorry, any questions about what these definitions mean? So there's some examples of minor deviations on the next slide. And I want to just, this first one says missed study visits. And I want you to understand that a protocol deviation is a deviation from the protocol. So it must say in the protocol that you are required to do that step in order to deviate from the protocol. You can also deviate from the study method of, or the MOP, the way that the study is designed. And that's also a type of deviation, but a protocol deviation deviates from the protocol. And it does, because this is pragmatic, it makes our job harder to define these things. It does say in the protocol that this is a standard of care study. It is a pragmatic trial, and we're following standard of care. However, we did include missed study visits in our documentation of deviations. And the reason we did that was because we need to know. Understand, please, that deviations are for us on our oversight of the study as much as yours. If there is a particular visit that everybody's missing, if there's a particular deviation that everybody's making, the problem might not be on the site level. The problem may well be, it probably is, at protocol level. And that's where we start questioning whether we need to do a amendment to the protocol because everyone is messing up here across all sites, right? We can't see that unless you're reporting these to us. So your reporting
And for those of you who have been with us from the beginning, you know, we've made probably 5 or 6 protocol amendments based on, you know, what we found to be a lot of ultimately pre-planned protocol deviations. And so we changed the eligibility criteria with regards to body mass index. We broadened the dates of the visit windows to accommodate early or late visits, more generally speaking. We changed the protocol around intra-abdominal abscess. We changed it around the C. diff a little bit. So again, this really helps us to understand where the protocol doesn't actually mirror standard of care, and we've changed the protocol accordingly.
Thanks, Mike. That's awesome examples. Yeah. And so we need that information for that reason. We also need to know how our data is affected. So sometimes we can't change that protocol, but we need to know the impact of where you've deviated from what we said must be done so that we can judge and the statistician can judge if there is an impact on the data. So it's critically important information that you're giving us. Please give it all to us. There's some examples here in this slide. Missing data. Please go ahead and put that in. We need the why. We can see the data is missing, but we need to know what led to that. That's very helpful for us. There's a couple here, and Anne very kindly put these in, I think, because we're seeing it so much in the monitoring that contact to the patient is in our protocol. And if you're not reaching out to the patient after every shipment, it is a deviation and not one that I can easily justify for any site. It's a phone call. It's if you can set it up with your site IRB or whichever IRB you're following to reach out to them via email if you have that set up with your patient. But making contact with them. Did you receive everything? Do you understand how to take it? Since you've already been taking it, are there any health issues? Anything pop up for you that we need to talk to the PI about? So all of that is important data gathering, and it was designed in the protocol to be done. It must be done. Get it done. Not collecting unused steady medication. People, we got to do it. And if you don't do it, it says in the protocol we're going to, it's a deviation. So these are just examples of anything that says that we're going to do it in the protocol. If we don't, it's going to be a deviation. So, any questions about what minor deviations versus a major deviation? The first phone call is to your study monitor, and that is not because I have all the answers. It's because I need to be aware of what the question is. I go to Mike, I go to the project manager, and we give you an answer where everybody is on the same page, right? And we may publish that for everybody else if it's something really new and different that we hadn't seen before, which is highly unlikely in the study, but that needs to be our process. Any questions for me on what this means? Okay, let's go to the next slide before I run out of time here. Am I out of time? I'm okay, right? Okay, I'm going to carry on.
A couple minutes.
Okay, so this is what the deviation log looks like. It was sent to you, so you should have it. I'm trying to hold the line on and not make so many changes to what you were trained on. I want to keep it as close to that, and that means that I'm not, some of these I'm not over the moon about asking because it's not, for minor deviations, it's not quite as necessary. So, you know, your opinion on how these work is incredibly important to me. So don't hesitate to give me feedback. I want these to work for you. I want you to own them and it really help you in getting the job done. So next email. Sorry, next slide shows you the email. Now I'm trying to hurry. So it's gonna, if you've not looked at it yet, it gives you a link. You click on that link, and the first question I copied down there for you. And you have to tell us whether you've got a deviation to enter into Reg HEPA this time. If your CDL2 is totally caught up in the database, your answer is no. If that paper CDL2 has one or two that have not been entered, or you have not entered them yet into the paper CDL, then your answer is yes. And you're going to go to the next step, which, let's see what the next slide is. You'll go to the next slide or to the next survey, and it will complete that information for you. I get notified when you answer yes. So I'm going to be able to help you by looking at what's in there, and anything we need to adjust, we will. If I look at your deviation and I believe it's more serious and it requires a CAPA, and I did want to talk just a minute about a CAPA, and I'm not going to get to, so we'll move that to the next conversation. Your requirement here with this first email to you is to say yes. And if you already said no, it's no problem. There's another one coming next month, and you can practice with that one. Until I see that each site has answered yes to one of the surveys and entered a deviation, your training is not complete. So you can use a new deviation that we don't know about yet in SharePoint, or you can go into SharePoint and get that old deviation log and enter one from there. It's not going to matter. It doesn't matter to me as a monitor if they're in two places. If they're in no places, that matters. So get it in, get your practice done either this month or next month. Know that that SharePoint log is going to be locked in around the 15th of the month, so that it's no longer able to be used. You can still access it, you can still see it, because you still have to provide it to a monitor or an auditor, but you won't be uploading anything to SharePoint, right? So get that downloaded or print it out, put that with the explanation of our new process in your, under your tab for deviations, and own this then as your process. Any questions for me? You can always email me. You can always be in the middle of it and call me. It's no problem. I want to help you get this done in the easiest way possible. Those of you that done it, I wanted you to give me a response on the chat, but we're not going to have time for that. So you're going to have to send me an email what you thought. How did it go for you? And if you just said no, then it was probably pretty easy. But any questions for me at all on what our process is? If you read what I sent you, I think you'll be fine. Mike, any comments?
No, thanks, Janine. And again, this will help us be more proactive. And as we notice that a site is having the same deviation time and time again, we don't need to wait until the end of the year to intervene. As we notice that all of the sites are having the same deviations time and time again, we don't need to wait till the end of the year to intervene. It allows us to take a much more proactive approach and deal with this, whether it be a protocol amendment or retraining or whatever it may be. And it allows us and the central IRB to know that that we are running a tight ship. All right, and I think that was probably the last slide of our conference call. Sorry, we are a few minutes over. As always, we'll talk to you guys in the beginning of June, but any questions come up between now and then, just reach out. Happy May.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.